What is up, guys? I do hope you're well, and welcome to r/slash PettyRevenge. If you're new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too, as it truly does help this channel out. A huge thank you to the members of our channel. You are truly appreciated. And with that being said, let's get straight on with today's stories. Much love, guys. Our first story comes from Catep2000. Ruining a wedding reception for fun and profit. When I was 13, so 8 years ago, my dad remarried after divorcing my mum 4 years before. Before the divorce, his fiancée had been his mistress. My mum is completely better off without him, and ignoring the fact that I wouldn't exist. I don't think she would have married him in the first place. Even if I think my parents weren't a good match, there's no excuse to cheat on your wife. This woman was fucking vile in all sorts of ways. She constantly belittled me, made fun of the fact that I needed to take pills for my mental illness, despite being a fucking pharmacist. I don't get it either. And was generally awful to me and my siblings. But she was a decade younger than my dad and reasonably hot, so she didn't give a shit how she treated us. The one time he actually listened to us about her is when they were thinking of having a baby, and my brother said he'd ask our mum to sue for full custody of us if they did. So anyway, they got married. I was a bridesmaid, because that bitch had no real friends. The other two bridesmaids were her sister and my sister. My brother was the best man, because she didn't like my dad's best friend. He and my dad still don't talk to this day, even though the guy was like an uncle to me as a little kid. It was a wedding, everything went normally. But at the beginning of the reception, before the first dance, we were taking pictures in front of a chocolate fountain, looking like the happy family we would never and would never be. I'm on the autism spectrum and have a problem maintaining eye contact. This extends to looking at a camera. So when we had to retake a photo because I wasn't looking, she leans down and whispers something in my ear. I'm not going to repeat it, but it involved the R word. I don't like saying it. Anyway, I kinda snapped and decided she was going to pay for this. No one noticed, or at least no one called me out, when I started slowly moving the chocolate fountain towards the edge of the table. When it got to the edge, it makes contact with the back of that pure white wedding dress and slowly drips down. By the time she notices, it looks like she shit herself. But for all anyone else knows, this was an accident. She has no spare dress, and that stain is not coming out. So first dance, cutting the cake, speeches, everything. This woman has what looks like a shit stain on the back of her dress. It was a small revenge, but it was so worth it. What's supposed to be the happiest day of this stupid woman's life, and she's going to remember that stain every time she thinks about it. They never did get the stain out, and nobody knew it was me. Until now, I guess. Hi family, if you're reading this. Susie, you're a cunt, and you deserve that chocolate stain. This is what I love about PettyRevenge so much. Although I'm thinking this one's slightly verging on a bit more than petty, you know. That's someone's wedding dress that you got revenge on there. But fair play to you. For someone to whisper that in your ear. Horrible person, man. Horrible person, and totally deserved that. So well done to you. Our next story comes from Bootleg Moon. How I made a bratty Thumbelina stop flirting with my boyfriend. Back in high school, I dated a guy who we called Jared. After school, Jared and I would hang out at his place with a group of 3 to 5 friends. One girl in our group of friends was interesting. We'd call her Trixie. Trixie was a petite girl whose entire personality revolved about being cute and petite. Also, despite being in a relationship herself, she was clearly into Jared. She would claim that things were too heavy and ask him only to carry them, comment on how tall he was compared to her, ask him for piggyback rides, just general nonsense that made us both sort of uncomfortable. I wouldn't tolerate this now, but we did at the time because we liked hanging out with her boyfriend. Well, it being that time of the month, I bought a new box of tampons to keep under the sink. It was one of those variety packages that includes different sizes, important for later. Later that afternoon, I went to grab one and noticed that 6 or 7 of the light tampons were already missing. What the hell? Then I realised Trixie had been going to the bathroom a lot. Being so aggressively petite and adorable, I guess she considered it beneath her to use regular tampons. When we hung out the next day, she finished all the light ones. I was wondering what she'd do when she approached me off to the side and asked if I had any more. I quietly told her no, sorry, but she could always use the bigger size so she wouldn't have to change them so often. She answered very loudly, looking right at Jared, "Oh, I can't use those jumbo tampons like you. I'm way too tiny." What the Hell, I guess she thought it would sound sexy or something. So what did I do? I hid the entire box of tampons in his room and replaced it with a box of diaper thick maxi pads that I only wear to bed. The next time she went to the bathroom, she was in there a long time, probably searching for tampons I'd moved. When she finally came out wearing one of the diaper sized pads, she crinkled like a fucking newspaper wherever she walked. Jared, knowing full well, asked the room at large, "What's that sound?" She left shortly afterwards. She also cold shouldered me from then on, which was just an added bonus as far as I was concerned. As a cherry on top of the cake, I heard through the grapevine that she's gained at least 50 pounds since high school. Bet you don't ask other people's boyfriends for piggyback rides anymore, huh, Trixie? Yeah, there's no excuse for someone flirting with your boyfriend like that. Asking for like piggyback rides when she's got a boyfriend herself? What the hell is she playing at? Crazy girl. Our next story comes from Revolutionary Basil. Try to elbow your way to the front at a gig? I guess I'll just sing to every song. This was a few years ago in Spain. I just happened to find out that one of my favourite bands were playing a gig on the other side of the country from where I was living. As the gig was on my birthday weekend, I figured, why not? So I found someone else who wanted to go. We organised it all and planned for a fun weekend of sightseeing and music. Fast forward to the gig itself. We got there at good time so we could grab a drink and find a good spot to watch the stage. Just as the band came on, two Spanish girls started elbowing their way towards the stage, deciding to stop just in front of me, which was pretty infuriating as they were also holding their phones up to video the band, blocking my view. Now I know every song of this band and I have a singing voice like a cat being washed, so I hit upon a perfect revenge. Every time this girl tried to film, I'd sing along at the top of my voice, every damn song, as well as sing along into her ears just for fun. I ended up having a great time when avoiding her elbows, and she has zero video without my voice in it. I like the fact that you admit to your voice being like a cat being washed. I just imagine when she's watching that now every time, she could just hear you. Lovely. Our next story comes from Dawana. The school counsellor called me a liar. This happened about 10 years ago when I was in 11th grade. I had to make up 0.5 of credit for a math class I fucked around in my freshman year. So for the first half of the school year, I made up my credit and was finished with my math classes for the rest of my time in high school. At the end of the semester, the school passes out our new schedules for the second semester. Well, they gave mine and it was missing one of my classes. They didn't bother placing me in another class at all and just left it blank. I had no way of getting home 1 hour early, so I needed another class to fill my schedule. Well, I went to the guidance counsellor to fix this mistake. The only way to see a counsellor is to check in the main desk and wait. My math class was my last period. So I sat in the office until school was let out and I went home. Next day, instead of my last period class, I sat in the office until the bell rang. I did this 4 days and went back to my math class and sat there. The math teacher got irrationally angry and kicked me out of the class because I didn't belong there. Well, day 5 of sitting in the office, I decided to tell my mother, and my mother's way of dealing with things like this was calling her mother. Personally, I hate my grandmother because she's a mean and hateful person, but it worked out for me this time. She called the school and talked to about 3 different people until she got online with my counsellor. Well, she called my grandmother a liar and said I'd been skipping classes every day. She later called me to the office and showed me her signing sheet. She said, "How dare you lie to your grandmother, you never signed my sheet." Well, she showed me a yellow piece of paper and the one I signed was a purple construction paper like sheet. Well, I told her what I thought about her and she sent me back to class. My grandmother did not take to being called a liar nicely. She knows the head of school council and called him. From what I heard, she let into him so bad, he called my counsellor and let into her. She called me back to her office a little later and apologised to me, and she would immediately fix my schedule. A whole week after the schedules went out, the head council member said she was tired of her shit and wanted to fire her, but she begged him on the phone. She kept her job for 2 more years after this, and because I didn't need an actual class, they made me an office aide and I received 100% A in that class and watched soap operas with a nurse every day and hang out with other good friends who was in A too. Sorry for my bad writing, I went to school in rural Florida. What is it about Florida? I've heard this in several stories now, like Florida has a bad education system. Is this really true? And our next story is from Laura Michelle. Turning my roommate's room into a dump. Okay, so this is my first ever post, but reading some of these stories reminded me of this, and I thought maybe it fits here. In college, I lived in a share house. Each room in a house was rented separate. For the most part, it was wonderful, and I made great friends with my roommates. There were 4 rooms upstairs and 1 larger master suite downstairs. The girl who lived downstairs absolutely refused to take out the trash. The rest of us had no problem with it, and if we were the one who noticed, we took it out. We talked to her several times about filling up the garbage and leaving it. She always swore she'd help out, but never did. Somewhat related side note, in general, she was not fun to live with, although I wouldn't say she was absolutely terrible, just very self-centered. Anyway, she graduated and was getting ready to move out, and so was going through things and tossing them out. One night, another roommate and I cleaned up the downstairs area, including taking the trash out, and went upstairs to hang. The next morning, we came down and the garbage was not only full, but had a separate bag and boxes stacked next to it. We were floored. Turns out, she'd gone through her kitchen stuff, including food and room, and didn't want to take the trash out. She was also still in bed, and had a habit of sleeping in. I was so livid that I methodically took every piece of trash out of both bags and the boxes and carefully piled them in front of her door. Her bedroom had French doors, and I made sure to completely block both. I even wrapped some around the handles for good measure. The pile was about 4 to 5 feet tall, and the doors open inward. So when she woke up later that day and opened the door, the trash fell into her room, and the only way would be to move or clean up the garbage. I told my other roommates that she hopefully gets the message, and it appears that she did. For the remaining couple of weeks she lived there, she didn't fill up the garbage. She also didn't speak to the rest of us, but well, we counted that as a win. Absolutely amazing. I've just got like a picture of one of those comedy scenes now where she stood behind the door and she opens it and then suddenly just gets buried in trash. Wow. If you'd like more Reddit stories, I have 2 playlists on your screen right now. Not only will they keep you entertained, but they will also help me with the YouTube algorithm. Spicy. Thank you very, very much for being here. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing and liking the video too. All massively helps towards this channel, and it is truly, truly appreciated. As I said, thank you for the time out of your day, and much love to you. Take care now.